to a very special milestone episode of your Dream Coach podcast, episode number 50. Well, I'm your host, Shayla Wey, and today we're doing something a little different. So to celebrate 50 episodes of dreaming big, taking bold action, and building a life on purpose, I'm sharing a live recording from a message that I gave recently at Front Row Moms, a powerful community of ambitious women balancing business, motherhood, and everything in between. The theme is momentum over perfection, mastering business and life balance. And this is a message straight from the heart, because let's be honest, chasing your dreams while managing work, family, and your own well-being doesn't come with a manual. But what I've learned and what I share in this episode is it's not about having it all figured out. It's about learning to move forward, even when it's messy, even when it's imperfect. So whether you're in the middle of a pivot, launching something new, or just trying to get through a tough season, this one's for you. Let's dive into the conversation that had women nodding, crying, and walking away, reminded that they are doing better than they think. So here's episode 50, Momentum over Perfection.
It's really great to be here. And I remember when I got the email from Megan and Angie about, asking if I would give a message here. It was crazy because I'd just written down every morning when I start, most mornings I should say, is I'll start writing down like 5 things I'm grateful for and then 10 things I want to have happen. And it was that week I was like, it'd be kind of cool to give a message like outside of what I was doing. And then I got that email. So it was really cool. So as I was prepping for the message, I had just some major procrastination. I was like, normally I'm like, on top of it. And obviously Angie and I had gone through like the meat and potatoes. And I was like, what is like the reason that I'm not just like have all my bullet points? And it reminded me the reason that I actually started coaching was because I wanted to build that business with my heart. I was like, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. And that's how I really want to lead this message. And so I wanted to just share, as we kind of did some reflection, I mean, it's really cool when you think about leadership and growth and doing things inside out the business, this is our picture from last year. And I was like, wow, like being here again a year later with some of you, and then taking a minute to reflect and being in this space, right? The whole power of a pause is I was like, what have I done in the last year that I actually shared at this event, or that this event like was that, those magic moments? And these were some of the things that came out of it is in my wisdom circle, my ask was, what could I do with an 11-year-old boy, he was 11 then, that's not just taking him for food? And they're like, what is he like? I'm like, video games, sports. And through that feedback, I was like, I'm going to start a mom and son's fantasy hockey league. And so there was like 10 of us and our boys, and we had these like terrible names, like they were not appropriate at all, but we finished last, so that was great. But I was like, that was a magic moment thing that came from this, but it was all about living this life by design. I actually got intentional about this podcast. We had a speaker that talked about, was a sex coach or a sex person on the female parts, and she taught us how to look at that as flowers. Do you guys remember that? And I was like, it's a flower, and I'm going to own it. And just shifting that, getting to my 40th country before I turned 40 and doing that in Africa. And I was like, oh, this is like the best trip ever. And then actually pivoting my career from this event to fully leaving direct sales and in coaching. And so if this is whether you were here last year, I know we had reflections, or this is your first event, it's so powerful, like we all just shared, as to, what a group of people and time away can do. And I know this movie, and Steph would mention this Inside Out about feelings. And I was like, how do I start with this group? And I remember when I was 15 watching the Oprah show, and this mom was on, and she was talking about how, well, I'm the most important person. And I was like 15. So you're like, you don't really know, you're not working yet or anything. Well, I guess I was working, but not in a career. And she was like, yeah. And the audience was like, oh, you're just saying, oh, you're a mom and a wife, and how that's so selfish. And they just laid into her. And I'm like glued in, like, what's the secret message here? She's like, well, listen, just calm down. If I am not good, then my marriage is not good. And if that's not good, well then shit, those kids are screwed. And that was a core memory that I literally now have that visual. It was like, boop. And I remember almost every decision that I made was like, no, I have to put me first. And not because I'm selfish, but it's like when I'm in a good place, everything else really kind of falls into dominoes, right? And that has truly like been a core moment of my life. So what I wanted to do is I want you guys to think back to a time, because I like the style of how Jocelyn did some reflection, some questions, and then also some value. So I want you guys to think back to a time in your life where there was a core memory that showed up that either defined, right, in a professional world, how has that helped you? Or how did that maybe make you the person you didn't want to be? So maybe if you grew up where, parents worked all the time and you're like, I don't know, whatever that is for you. So just go back to a time and see if you can, go into like the inside out of your brain and think back to a time, and we'll just give you guys a couple minutes to reflect on that. Awesome. Well, appreciate you guys sharing. So LFG, obviously, yeah, let's fucking go, but also leadership, fulfillment, growth. So we're going to dive into kind of 3 sections, which is how we show up in our professions, the fulfillment, which I'm excited to dive in that one, why it all matters. Sometimes these weekends are powerful for like, whoa, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? So kind of pausing and thinking about that fulfillment side, and then growth, right? Who are we going to continue to become? And from conversations I've heard happen is there's a lot of like ideas and ambitions and things that are stewing in this. And we want to tap into where we're going to go with that. So with leadership, some of the things that I see in coaching a lot of people, and I coach men and women, but I want to pull into, mostly specifically what I see from the working moms. And so I want you to look at this list, and I'm going to give you guys some examples and some tools and things that I do with some of these ones that come up. But I want you to think of like, which of these 2 really resonate with you, okay? And I don't want to come from a place of being negative, but I like to sometimes ask the question, what's not working? So if we can figure out the pain points of what's not working for us, then it's actually easier to bring in a solution. So decision fatigue, one of my coaching clients, they own a law firm, and there's a lot of decisions when you're an active lawyer and then you're also leading the law firm. And we just have an agreement that we just make one decision on that coaching call, right? And that we limit it to maybe 3 decisions a day. And if it's after that, it's like, nope, I hit my 3. That's it. We're going to parking lot that for tomorrow, right? Prioritizing everybody else. One of my coaching clients is a realtor. She has had 3 IVF babies on her own. She's a badass, successful real estate agent. And you could imagine, right, being all of the things. And it was just a matter of, well, how do we just create boundaries? How do we get a house manager? How do we, the nanny and the, all the different moving parts, but how do we plan, and how does this work for everybody? Sometimes it's been lack of time and space, where we're so scheduled to every minute that we don't give ourselves that space to actually just think about the things or plan or do those things. And, for me, like as a coach, I'm like, here's my problem, here's my solution. It's like 2 voices in my head. And mine was that is I, was always just like to the every minute. And so I just shifted. I'm like, okay, what doesn't feel good? I'm like, weekends aren't weekends as moms. It just is all like, right? It's a weekend. I'm like, what does that even mean? And I was like, okay, if I could start my Monday from like 9 to 12, where I just didn't have anything, it was like my space, that would be effing cool. And I did that. And now it's like, there's no stress or anxiety going into the week. I'm like, bye guys, like have a coffee, or I could do whatever I want. And that was just an intentional shift when it came to like me feeling how I felt about the schedule. Imposter syndrome, right? See that all the time. One of my coaching clients is, she owns a gifting business. And it's all about, just being the beginner of something and creating a plan that now gives her confidence, is just trying to take on too many things. So sometimes we struggle with that. Sometimes it's just that emotional labor. And I had one coaching client, she was like, I just don't have time for like the fitness, and she works in financial management company. So tax season is quite stressful. So we knew from like some of the coaching from the previous year, that was a really big deal for her. And I'm like, how do we approach this next season of February, March, April differently? And we just brainstormed, and I'm like, what would it look like if you started your day where you got to the office 30 minutes early and then you went for a walk first? She's like, oh, I'm like, you can, and so she has a 9 to 5 office job, right? But we implemented a walk at the beginning of the day. So she got there and did her emails, but then that walk was there. She showed up to work in her runner so that she didn't have an excuse. And then just allowing her to reshape, hey, during tax season, you're probably not going to be done exactly at 5 o'clock. So what would that look like if we just said, okay, well, mentally, I'm going to work till 6. So then it feels like you're getting off early every day versus being pissed off that you're working late when it's to be expected because it's tax season, right? And then getting her to parking lot at the end of her day so that she wasn't going from this into that. And, we created a thing like, how do you, end the day? And even though I work at home, I still parking lot at the end of the day. Like, what went well? What could go better? What's kind of got, over the next day. Sometimes it's that lack of integration between roles where you're in positions and you're like, I thought it was their job or their job. And that can be frustrating, right? And so just, coaching people to getting, well, what is your role? What are you responsible for? And just getting that clarity. And then sometimes it's just fear of outgrowing people or seasons, right? And sometimes that can really hold us back. So with one of the sales companies I work with, one of the salespeople, she's one of the top achievers. It's not her business, but I said, what if we just shift it like you're the CEO of your own business within the business? And that has just totally changed how she shows up and is continuing to grow. So some examples of different things. So I want you guys to, out of that list, and it doesn't have to be this list, maybe there's other things that come up for you that you're like, oh, and I know that we, try to think positive, but sometimes to create the solution, we do have to get real and be like, what is not working? What's not working for you right now, right? So think of 2 things in your professional life that's just not working for you. Okay. And when you have those 2, this is where I want you to come up with a solution. And we're going to kind of do like not a full wisdom circle, but I want you guys to share with your groups what it is that you're kind of wrestling it with. What is it that could be a simple change? Because sometimes when we share that with people, they actually have some really great answers. Okay. So write down your 2. And then when you're ready, you guys can start to have a conversation. We'll give this like 5 minutes or so where you can have a healthy conversation of just some pain points. Like what doesn't feel, like what are you wrestling with in your professional world that maybe as a team, you could create a nice solution so that you can go back and honestly, the simplest little things in schedules or mindset or just exercises that we could add into what we already do can be such a game changer and make you feel so different about how you show up in your professional space. I know one of the things that I was taught from, someone I was listening to that was a professional was just before I got home, pulling over in my car and just like, I have very high masculine energy, right? And so not coming into my house as boss, as I'm a wife and a mom and not running, my house like a team meeting, or a sales office, right? And my husband would be like, oh, hey, how's it going? And so just literally pulling my car over, checking my Instagram, replying to messages, and just doing all the things that, would make my husband mad when I get home, right? You just feel like, oh, if I'm there at this minute, I'm a better mom. No, actually you're not. Give yourself 5 minutes, get out of character of whatever you're doing all day and be like, okay, now I'm wife and mom. And it's just cool. All right, well, let's pivot over to the second one, which is gonna be fulfillment. And I want you guys to write down, what is your definition of success? Okay. And what has happened in your life when you feel the most fulfilled? So most of the time when I do this exercise, right, oftentimes people think success is a dollar value. If that's for you, that's cool. Success can look a lot of different ways. And sometimes if you've never actually really created that definition for yourself, we can chase different things that we don't even really know, or it just gives us a good reflection of like, oh, that is what I think success is. And I actually don't even have anything close to that. And that shifts, right? As Angie was talking about, different periods of life, right? What was successful to me when I was 20 was a lot different than when I was 30, is a lot different than now that I'm 40, right? So success kind of does shift for people too. So. Awesome. Well, yeah, we know this was a powerful thing that I felt like I did a long time ago when I was in a similar workshop is, and mine, it became to be spinning all the plates while enjoying the journey. And so success was never something I was ever going to get to. I was always successful when I was 21, when I was 25, when I was 30. It just looked different because as long as I had those buckets spinning, that was my, and so I think it's powerful for us to know and to check in, right? If this is my definition of what success means, am I actually successful, right? And sometimes, as we build wealth and more success in our careers, we can get caught up in more and more and more. And lots of times, and we've even heard like from Amy, she's like, I just don't want things, right? As it's just getting clear on what matters to you. And there's not one way to define success. And Tony Robbins talks about how success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And in a lot of the coaching I do, when I see people and we kind of dive deep, is you're probably familiar with these. And so if you are, I apologize for repeating myself, but there's these 6 human needs that we need to be extremely fulfilled. We need to have certainty. So we all have careers, right? And jobs. So we have that certainty. We also have uncertainty in our professional work, right? As much as there is that, there's also some uncertainty. We all have significance. We're all moms. We're all wives, right? We're all people in our professions, and we have love. The 2 that sometimes when we get to certain levels of success or certain parts of our life or different chapters, and it's not even age dependent, is we're lacking contribution and we're lacking growth. And so if you're ever in a place in your life right? And this, as you keep growing, right, this comes up, different times, is oftentimes it's like, how am I contributing to the world? And it could be monetarily, where I'm giving back to charities, but it also could be time volunteering. It also could be contribution with your gifts, right? When some of you are talking about these side hustles, it's because of these passions that have like burning and you're like, but I just want to, yeah, right? And it's that contribution at a different level that makes us feel fulfilled, and then growth, right? And that's why we're here, is that this makes us feel good when we're growing, right? And you probably heard the whole little quote, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. And when you're in a place like this, all of us have grown, even just since Thursday night. So when you take a step back, I want you to think about, okay, what kind of in your life do you feel like? And maybe you're hitting all of them right now, and that's awesome. But I want you to think about that as like with that contribution. So is it things like, oh, I got this promotion. Why do I just still feel like, right? Or it's like, oh, we added this extra company, or we did this, or I did this project in my job and we killed it, or whatever it is. Think back to some of those feelings. And again, this isn't a bad thing. It's just sometimes being aware of like, oh, that's what that is. And lots of times when I take on a new coaching client, or I'm helping them strategize, and they're like, well, I've got this and that and this and that. And I'm like, well, what is missing? Or I'll say, like, what I'm hearing is that there's maybe a little lack of this contribution that you're looking for, growth. And they're like, that's it. So just kind of thinking about that, right, at that next level, what do I really need to be fulfilled? So what part of your current vision of success maybe doesn't actually feel fulfilling? Thinking about that. And if you let go of what should be fulfilling and redefine that in your own terms, what would shift, right? So maybe just take a second. We're not going to do a share with this one, but just pausing for a second and thinking like, oh, maybe that does hit some light bulbs. Maybe that resonates with you a little bit. But just think about, maybe there is something that you're like, oh, if I was able to contribute that way, if I was growing in that way, right? What shifts for you? Because when we talk about, I think it was at this table, is that when you feel good in certain areas, everything is in alignment. We think about our careers, oftentimes that's sometimes what can be missing. So I remember when I hit my first, that weird feeling of like, my office had just hit $1 million for the year. I won the Rolex and we were like killing it. And I just started crying. And one of my coworkers was like, what is wrong? Like, you just hit like this big checkpoint in your career. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to go after next. And he's like, are you kidding me right now? And I was like, yeah, like it was like a 3-year vision of like hitting this and the Rolex and all these things. And I was like, he's like, well, what? And I'm like, so like, it has to just be more than just a paycheck. And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, I don't know. And then we just got chatting. I was like, well, Brad's always wanted this car. And I'm not even a car person. It's like a Hellcat or something. But it's like, and I was like, and he's like, well, why do you get him that? And I was like, yes, that's my next goal. And I was just like, it was this whole thing where I'm like, we don't have to wait to be old to do cool shit. Like, I'm like, let's just get the dream car now with the kids. And it was just so crazy. The whole story, how it all came together. And literally it was like the typical Father's Day gift where it was like a mug where it's like the kids writing, I love daddy. And he's like, oh, thanks guys. This is so awesome. Right. And then the key was inside and it was just this magic moment. I was like, that was what I was working for. Like, that's what the early mornings, the long days, all that shit sometimes that we're like doing was for these fun things. And I'm not, and again, I love how Angie prefaced, it's not like you'd be like, oh, look what I did, because I can be in this space and be like, fuck yes, look at, this was so fun. And this is why I love what I do, because it's not about, oh, I got a paycheck and, it's like I'm like living a life where it's, spinning those plates and doing that. My next pivot and challenge was, in COVID, we were super blessed in the business because we crushed it. We pivoted and we sold so much and we broke records and I was making all this money, but I was working so much and I was hit total burnout and I cried and my husband's like, have a good day. And he is home with the kids because, the way that his work was is that he got to do that. And I was like depleted, like fully on empty. And my husband's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to go work at the Starbucks. He's like, have a good day. I'm like, bye. It's a great day for a great day. And, and I that's the thing. I'm like, it's a great day for a great day. And they're like, okay, mom. But I was like, it's a great day. And then I was like, what in the hell is missing? And I'm like, I need some contribution. And I was like, okay, this has got to be my next why. And I rallied the team and we saved money and we fundraised like 25 grand. And I got to pull in my kids and we took our team. And I was like, it became, and it revitalized me from that burnout to be like, it's not about the hours and the this and the that. It was like this bigger thing, right? And so sometimes having these things outside of our workspace that we can pull work into and just doing things that are like constantly pushing you, right? I, signed up for this hike that I thought, kind of like your hike this morning is what I thought I was doing. And my girlfriend's like, yeah, we're going to do a girls trip. I was like, oh, yes, Seattle. It was awesome. We had a meeting and I was going to zip over, and Mount Rainier, didn't even know what that was. And then I like literally Googled this shit like 2 weeks before, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like I was like sitting on my stairs and like just like crying. I was like, there's like, it's a glacier. It's like a she's like, okay, we'll go to Seattle and have food and like whatever. And I was like, oh, but I was like, I needed this like in my business. I was just like so much imposter syndrome. I was like, am I good enough? All these things. And I was like, I need to do this because if I can do this, I will like show up differently. Like I was scared of whitewater rafting. I was like, I'm going to die. And like there was so much around this next layer of like, growing to the next level, because my best friend, her brother died in an avalanche when we were in high school. And it was just like so many fears, and I'm not good enough. And I'm in this thing. And I was like, shit, I'm going to climb this glacier. And that circle, with this circle, is where I effing slept, okay? I was like, hashtag not a mountaineer. So that is one thing that I learned from that. But the growth of doing those things, and sometimes when life is so the same, you just have to say yes to something crazy. And for some of you are like, that sounds amazing. I'm like, no, not for me. But you do it and you grow. And guess what? When you do something like that and you're sleeping on a mountain where the snow is like literally like, and you're pooping in a bag, right? And you have to bring it down off this mountain. Like, it was crazy. And I literally came back to my business and I was like, how do you like me now? I'm a mountaineer. It's because when you're growing and you're fulfilled, you just don't ever go backwards. So it's like, I just challenge you to like, say yes to something that scares the shit out of you. Jump out of a plane, do something, right? That is going to like empower you to do something really cool. All right, this next thing, and how many of you guys have ever heard of the Dream Manager? Keiko, yes, my Keiko people. Okay, perfect. So these categories, and I could post this or whatever too, but this is a book. If you are in any type of leadership, this is a must read, because it is, I feel like when I learned this, like back in 2007, I was only a year into the direct sales business, is this whole idea of it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter what your job is. And the story that they share is that this, the guy who talks about the story, he's running a janitorial business. And he's like, sat down with all of his employees and he's like, what is it that you want? Why do you want it? How are we going to get there? And it was all these dreams. And he was able to help people buy their first house. And these people were janitors. They weren't making oodles and oodles of money, but they were able to do that, some of the coolest things. And so something that, we go back to time and time again is, what are those dreams, right? Dreams are the fuel in life to keep us inspired, right? Being motivated isn't a thing. It's like we have to have something that we're always excited about. And it can look in a lot of different ways. It could be physical goals, emotional goals. Maybe it's legacy goals. Maybe it's doing the things like learning the instruments and the painting, right? It's like just being intentional with it. And so this is something that I bring into so many coaching sessions, because it's like we can do all the different things, but if we're not excited about what that's doing for us, it's like, well, then it just kind of ends, right? And so I want you guys to take a second to dream, because here's why. When you're little, these are my kiddos, these aren't them currently, they're older now, but when you're a kid, right, and you're like just a kid, where's your brain at? You're like, I'm going to be a astronaut. I'm going to be a, XYZ. You're going to be all the things, because guess what? You dream without limits. You just get an opportunity to be like, I'm going to just go to the moon, and I'm going to be, whatever. What did you guys want to be? A what? Veterinarian, yes, and save all the animals. And what else? Actress, amazing. What else? Ballerina. Oh, well, you kind of are, the Disney princess, right? But you just, like, I'm just seeing all these smiles. Like, all of you guys are smiling because you're like, that was so fun. And we see that in our kids. And at some point, this world takes that away from us. And they're like, now you're an adult. And you're like, cool. I got to pay bills and clean toilets and fix things. And so fun. Adulting is so fun. And it just gets sucked out of us. And it's like, well, what if you could go back to that place where you're like, I could dream without limits? And why does it matter, right? Some of us just get so stuck in this. And I'm like, nothing I've done in my life is normal. I'm like, ugh, I don't ever want to, right? And I go the opposite, because I'm like, we get one space here. Why can't we use our workspace, our professional life, to be that vehicle for whatever that is for you, right? And then how do we make those a reality? So I want you guys to just think, and I know this is like a whole workshop in itself, but I just want you to be like, oh my gosh, like if I could just pull all these layers off me, the mom, the wife, and I could just go back and be like, what do I want to do? That's a dream. You know, like my sneaks, they were like on the dreams list. I'm like, I'm going to get the sneaks, you know, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be things. The cool thing about dreams, you guys, is that they could be legacy dreams. You could start a charity. You could give back. You could, you know, write a book. You could just do whatever. You could pick 10 mountains around the world that you want to go to and check those off over the next decade. It doesn't just have to be a thing. And it's so fun because no matter what we do in our professions, it can be the vehicle to get us to whatever it is. And it just makes life so fun when you get to go, you know, you're out with friends, you're at the soccer field, and you just get to talk about things that are not work and blah. You're like, oh, you know what? We just talked about these 10 mountains we're going to go to, or whatever that is for you and your family. And then you can pull that in with your kids, right? Like we do our dream boards every year. My husband's like, all right, guys, he's everything opposite of me. Okay, guys, it's time to make our dream boards. Let's make mom happy. I'm like, and this is the thing, you guys, is this is crazy. I've had a list. We had a trip to Mexico for the direct sales company, and we had to show up. Our one ticket in was 100 dreams we had to write down. That was in 2007. If I go back, if you read the book, it's like 10 per category. If I had like another hour, I could do a whole, and you would have over 100, no problem. But it gives you ideas in there, and it's so fun. And in 2007, so however many years that is, like a long time, right? And so everything where I got married, I was like, oh, I'd like to get married at Banff Springs. That'd be cool. I'd like to run a marathon. That'd be cool. You just put it down, and then it's like it actually happens, not because you just wrote it down, but you're like, I just remember just laughing putting these down. I'm like, I'm going to get married in the castle. Can't afford that. And then you just do that, right? Or like write a book. I'm like, fuck, I'm not even a writer. And it's these things, as you're saying, Matt, you manifest that shit. Or people like, what's the chances someone from the town came there, and then you're just fired up, right? It's exciting. I love it though, because that's the thing about it, is that it doesn't have to be so crazy. It could be something so simple. And as we just have more things and things, you're like, if I could have those socks. But I totally get it, and I think that's amazing. And how many of you guys can resonate with those, all the dreams, the adventures, the growth, or just the simplicity in that, right? Oh yeah, there's so much to that. It's just not a thing on a list. It's like everything that it creates and how you really create that life by design, right? So one of the things that, and Angie wanted me to share this a little bit, because this was something that was inspired by Sarah Blakely. This is my sneaks. I'm so excited. My BFF. So when I was just kind of figuring out, what was like my next why, and, pivoting between things, and I was like, man, and Sarah, she had posted in COVID or one of the last couple of years, that every year she takes her friends on a surprise trip. And I mean, she's like a billionaire, so she's got like a plane and things like that. I'm not quite there yet, but she's like, it just was so cool. And I'm like, that would be so fun. I mean, even for some of us to make this weekend happen was a big deal, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could create this dream in my friends' lives, this would be the best ever. So I kind of stole it from Sarah. And I was like, we had this really cool program called the Dreams Dollars in the direct sales company I was with. And so I was like, okay, for 2 years, I'm going to save my dream dollars. I'm going to save my dream dollars. And my grandma passed away actually like just a year ago. And it was like right before this retreat on Thursday was 1 year. And that day that she passed away, I was like, fuck it, life's too short. I booked the house, put down the deposit, and I was like, we live once. And then from that was April. Then, of course, like, when you think about taking on these big tasks, I'm like, okay, then I have to make something in Canva, and then I have to order these on Etsy, and then I have to get the thing. And then I tied Brooklyn in, and we made these boxes. So making the boxes probably took us like 2 months because time, right? But I was like, I want it to be a magic moment. And I'm like, it never feels shitty to be invited to something. And I was like, this is going to be my opportunity over the next few months to intentionally meet with different friends and share with them like why I love them and why they mean to me. And then we're going to go, my 40th year. And we're doing this in August, and we're going to Malta. And it was funny because Malta, I was like, they're not even a place I heard of. When we were talking about girls trip, I was like, oh, let's go to like Napa Valley or something where it's easy for us to fly to. My one friend called me out. She's like, that's so small of you to think that way, Shayla. Like, I would expect more from you. I was like, I was just trying to be like realistic and, teach her. She's like, I know, Shay, but like, that's just like so like simple for you. And I was like, well, where do you think we should go? And her boyfriend's like, where's a cool place in the world? He's like, you've been to Malta? I was like, what's Malta? I Googled it, and I was like, whoa, yeah, done. And it was just like, decision done. So these are all my girls, and these are all friends of stories from like, elementary and hockey moms I've met, and people that I just love. And I spend time with them in different ways, and they loved it so much. And only about half are going to be able to make it. Obviously, some are babies and getting married and whatnot, but it was so cool. So I just challenge you to, pull something that is just bigger than that, because that shifted and changed what it was about. And and all those things for me. And it's a really fun way to get excited about living life, outside of our business, in the business. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with the growth side of things. And, growth, yes, we've got personal growth, professional growth, financial growth. But, one of the things that always I feel when I think about growth is I feel like my trigger word is like luck. You're so lucky. And I'm like, no, actually, I have designed everything in my life. I grew up with my dad made 30 grand a year. He had to ref hockey to pay for Christmas gifts, all the things, right? And it's like, no. None of us are lucky. We're grateful, but we bring that into our lives, right? So as we're growing personally, professionally, financially, right, we can own that. And that can be a really, when I just think about growth. And when I think about this layer of growth, right, is that we've talked a lot about the different pieces of the puzzle, right? And I just remember too, probably from my core memory of what Oprah shared with me when I was 15, is that I'm not a mom, I'm not a wife. I'm Shayla, who is these things. And my kids are not my life. They know that. My husband is not my life. It's like all of these things in my life are my life, because this is my life and it's mine till the end. And kids grow up and move on, and your friend, all the things are important to you. So thinking of life like a puzzle, right? And so we spend a lot of our time, and this was coming up on this table here, we spend so much of our time showing up for our business, the meetings, the staff meetings, the plans, the systems, all that stuff. But it's kind of fascinating that we don't always do that for our home life. And I remember it was a weird thing when I was in my 20s, where I was learning these things of managing and putting things that are important to you, and things that stood out well, if it's important to you, it should be in your schedule. And I remember scheduling our first date night with Brad, way back when I was probably 21 or 22. And he's like, we're scheduling this? And I was like, well, yeah, because, and then it was just, and literally I'm not going to say every Wednesday, but almost every Wednesday for 21 years, we've had a date night every week. And we've just made it happen. And I remember my kids were little. And I share that with you is because if it's not in your schedule, it's not going to happen. And we show so much for work. You probably aren't going to be I'm kind of tired. I don't think I'm going to go to that meeting with my boss or my team. Yeah, I'm just going to go have a nap. Right? But we don't show up in our professional world. So then sometimes we change that when we get into our lives. And it's well, if they're all important, right? And I think back to our conversation you brought up yesterday about just the time. It was I don't have time. I'm well, what time are you getting up? Because I struggle with that, the getting up and then just getting into the day. And better, where it's if I just had that time, and I was well, she's what time you get? I'm I get up at 5:30. And it feels at first, right? She's done that for the last year, and it's been a game changer because that's where she's getting the time. And so just thinking of it that. So how do you not look at your life like a business, because it's your life, but treat it with that same intensity, where you take the meetings, but they're for yourself, and just own it. Or you plan, one fun thing to do as a family every month. That's our theme for this year. It's oh, we're going to do a paint night. And I just was I can't do something with you every day, all the time. And then mom guilt comes in. I'm but here's what I can commit to. One fun thing a month that's different. Whether it's bowling, that was what we did last month, right? It's just simple. And then it's out of my brain. Just if I'm planning in my business, I'm well, I do these things with the team, or I do this with this, or, whatever. Whether you're a teacher, it doesn't matter what your career is. It's we show up in a different way. How can I just simplify and make this, kind of for the family? So just kind of just a perspective shift on that is, when's the last time that you sat down and put energy into maybe, different things, whether it's a budget or money or visions or dreaming and intentions and clarity. And if we lead ourselves the same way we lead in our professions, how does that just reframe things? And your schedules, right? If we all do our schedules, if fitness is important to you, if your marriage is important to you, if your kids are important to you, if friends, I see my friends, we meet, us girls meet once a month. And it's a non-negotiable, right? It's just, if it's important, you find a way to have it in there. So we don't have time to do a full, that's a whole other lesson in itself. But I think of time management is life management, right? That is my definition of what it is. We have 168 hours in the week. When you start to get really intentional with where you're putting that time, you cut out the shit and you get intentional with the time you have. You fit things in, you get creative. You're at the soccer field and you're, doing some planning over here, whatever it is. It looks going to look different for all of us. But just that perspective shift of showing up. So think of it when you're in your workplace, and if, let's say, do you do any planning in work? Right, you do a lot of that. Yeah. So think about how that would feel at work if you didn't actually take time to work on, to plan ahead, or you just showed up every day and just did the business. It would feel, what would that feel like to you?
Yeah.
So that's exactly why I will make time to work on my life, because otherwise I'm a hot mess in my life. Yeah. I'm a shitty mom. Like, so there's no guilt around it, because just like how I'm going to do that for my business to grow the business, I'm going to do that. So it just, and again, your different phases of life. So when my kids were little, they went to bed early, let's say like 7. I would go to a coffee shop. I had to leave because also you're like tired, right? I would like leave, and it often was like Tuesday I would do that. And that's what it looked like at that season of life. You know, it could look a little different now, where it just looks different, but it's just a thing I put in the calendar. It's not weekly. Like I'll just do like 18 months at a time. And I have my kids' summer birthdays. So and if things feel good, then I just write them down. I'm like, I want to repeat that. Right. So, and you're always getting these ideas when you're driving, you're listening. It's never convenient. Just make a section in your notes and just parking lot those for that space. And then just do what you can handle, or like what feels good. Like what's one thing. So, and there's no guilt around it, because it's probably going to make you feel excited. And it's like that feeling of like planning gives you confidence. And so when you do that, then you just get to execute. And that's the fun part, right? And as moms, we're so much in that hamster wheel sometimes. And I'm like, I don't like that. What could I do different? And then you take a step back and you're like, okay, man, if I just planned out. So like right now, it's like I have all the summer planned where it's like the camps, and then we'll work on, and then as your kids are little, you make a list of things that are fun that don't even cost money, or then you pull the kids into it. So it is really giving yourself time to like get away. For me, my gift was I traveled a lot before pivoting. So my airplane time was very precious to me and just being away. So like this weekend, like even tomorrow, I have my list of all the things in the morning that I'm going to do and organize, because I knew this was a space in my life. So it's just finding a little bit of that, or just saying to your husband, like, hey, on Monday, I'm not coming home from work, and I'm actually just going to hit the coffee shop, and just taking that space for that creativity, right? So I think just starting with the end in mind is that feeling is like so worth it if it's important to you, right? And I'm not good projecting like what my importance is, but I think we can all agree we all feel better when we're like shit's together a bit, right? Yeah. And just being where you are right now. Don't get caught up on what everyone else is doing. Like sometimes people are like, oh, you just make it look so easy. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't just start there. Like it started with a lot of like, and I've worked with a lot of people. I mean, yeah. So it's a growth thing, and just being intentional. That's all. I really want you to think about just that power of the pause, and just thinking about like who it is if you could design your perfect morning. You know, is it like the calm before the chaos? You know, sometimes that's such a simple shift. I know it was for me, where it's like, what does that look like, right? How do you want your mornings to look like? What are those pain points in your life like that you need a house manager for? You're like, oh, I hate making lunches. Okay, just get your kids to do it. I don't know, like just figure out what doesn't feel good, or like more importantly, where you want to go, and just be okay that it doesn't have to just happen tomorrow, right? Is that we're all ahead of where we were a year ago, and we're all going to be different, right? As we go in there. So my ask is that you just take one small action that you can just start this week. It doesn't have to be changing everything, right? Just one thing. It could just be as simple as like pulling the car over before you walk into your house. It could just be one thing of like making a dream and starting to research it, whatever that is for you. But just taking one thing to really design the life, right, that you want, right? The person that you continue to aspire to be is already inside you, right? It's just under all of those layers of busy, right? So you don't have to become that person overnight. And that's part of the journey of life, right? Is that we get to continue to grow. And the more you become the woman that you are meant to be, right, the more your business, your family, your legacy, okay, will start to align with these. So thanks, ladies.
Wow, what a way to mark episode number 50. Well, if today's episode and today's message reminded you to breathe, to keep going, and to choose momentum over perfection, even in the chaos, then I hope you carry that with you into the rest of your week. And remember this, you don't need to have it all together to make an impact. And you don't need to have a perfect plan to take the next step. You just need the willingness to keep showing up. So if this episode resonated with you, I would love it if you shared it with another fellow mom, entrepreneur, or dreamer who really needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button just so you don't miss what's coming next, because we are just getting started. So here's to 50 episodes of growth, grit, and chasing dreams, and to the next 50 with even more heart. Thanks for being here. I'm cheering you always. And until next time, keep dreaming, keep moving, and keep choosing you.